Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. Today is a little bit different and we're actually kind of like going a bit off script from what we normally do. So today I'm joined by my regular co-host John, but also today we're joined by our very first male to the podcast, Mike Hartley, and also Robb from Microsoft. And
First
today
male guest. We've been on every episode and I'm there.
Yeah, first time guest. So the whole point of today is to basically talk about mental health for World Mental Health Day, which is actually happening today. So this is a very special episode, and I know from looking over Twitter and all that kind of stuff, Mike and Janet are very much all about mental health, and I'm saying for myself because obviously I'm a person that's experienced it, and I've spoken about it quite openly on this podcast. So first of all, John, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, what's up? How's it going? All good?
Yeah, we're all good. So I literally just got off a session with Donna Sarkar talking about neurodiversity, mental health. So I'm literally in the mindset for this one. So
yeah, like for this episode today, I'm gonna say I'm a complete noob. Like when it comes to mental health and stuff. Like luckily, touch wood, like I never really suffered from mental health, and like pray to God that stays like that. But yeah, I'm really interested in today's discussions and what's going to come out of it. Hopefully we have a message to at least one person that helps them if they listen today. So that's the aim of today. So Janet and Mike, we'll start with Janet. Would you like to kind of introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and we'll go from there?
Sure. Thanks very much for doing this, because everybody says everybody has to talk about mental health, and yet I feel there's a bit of a stigma, and I would love to get rid of that. So I'm Janet Robb. I'm based in Belfast. I am going to try and speak more slowly because I'm told I get very excited. I speak very quick and people go, what's she saying? So I work for Microsoft. I've been within the business applications Power Platform community from the very, very start. And I believe that training and education should be free to all, and we should support one another. But I too have suffered from mental health, and it to be honest with you, John, even though you've said I haven't really affected it, you will have suffered from some down days. You'll have suffered from something happening in your lifetime, and thank God it has been very short-lived.
Yeah, sure.
For me, at times, because of mental health is your emotional, psychological, and social well-being, and that therefore affects how we think, we feel, and we act. And sometimes when you have massive things happen to you, so I've had quite a few very serious health conditions, and circumstantial things happen that I did nothing about, and then that manifested itself over years into me being a wonderful performer. I call her Jazz Hands Janet. Sometimes you'll have met her. She's really excitable and friendly. And when Jazz Hands Janet goes home, the real Janet comes out, and she's very quiet, and she can be quite sad, and she can be quite emotional, and she can struggle, and she can do all of those things about push people away. But I have this super ego that comes up, which sometimes, she can be a pain in the neck and makes me feel very, very tired. And so I would genuinely say I have suffered very severely with mental health. I've had long periods of time off work when I've eventually admitted it. And all of a sudden, your capability to put your pants on and put your socks on becomes very, very, very hard. So I would thank you for this opportunity to talk about that mental health happens to nearly everybody, and that you can get over the other side, and you can learn certain ways of coping. And it would be great to have this opportunity to talk about how we support each other through these sometimes darker days.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful intro, Janet. So thanks for that. We'll park quite a lot of questions to ask out the back of that, and I think today's going to be a good episode. So Mike, introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And then
Tough one to follow there. So yeah, my name's Mike Hartley. I work at Agilicis, and I've been really vocal about mental health for a long time. I had a breakdown in 2007. And I battle mental health issues every day since then. For some people, mental health is transitory. It's a blip, it's a period. For some people, it can be longer. And for other people, it can be a lifelong thing. And as we're kind of 15 years on from my breakdown, mine's kind of looking as though it's a lifelong thing. And yeah, it's that as Janet says, that there is a real stigma still attached to it. It's getting better because we're seeing people like Princess Harry and William. They've been very open about mental health. Celebrities, sports stars. So you take Ben Stokes taking a break away just as he was the hottest property in English cricket because he needed to protect his mental health. And that's really helping progress the conversation. But there is a stigma. I mean, I've had lengthy time off work, and I've also not taken time off when I really should have done. And that's never a good thing. That really knocked me back, and it does. And yeah, it's a whole complex thing. At the end of the day, we all have mental health. Some of us have good mental health. Some of us have questionable, and some of us are just, yeah. So yeah. And the one thing I can promise you is I will be as blunt and as open and honest on this podcast as I always am, which can take some people aback sometimes.
I think you very much have to be that way.
Yeah, it's nothing better than being transparent and, you know, wearing your heart on your sleeve and stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So I think both of you said some really wonderful things, and something Mike, on what you touched on was the sports stars and seeing like celebrities and stuff talking about it. And I want to bring back to something that UFC fighter Paddy the Baddie Pimlet said after winning a fight, and he won a fight back in, I think it was July 23rd. Just got up the date just to make sure. And one thing he said, he goes, I'd rather have my mate cry on my shoulder than go to his funeral the week after. And that really stuck with me in terms of in terms of this subject here, is that I think particularly men don't talk enough about mental health and when they're going through things, and that's just something that's stuck. And kind of when he said it, like, I think gave a lot of people some like chills and made people like really think of kind of the implications of, and the benefits of talking to people about the subject as well. How would you kind of say that statement resides with yourself?
The one thing I would kind of say is that, yeah, men can be really bad about opening up.
We're terrible for it.
But I will also say that I've spoken to quite a few women in tech when I've opened up and when I've tweeted that I'm suffering social anxiety at events. And I've spoken to quite a few women who've come up and spoken, and they feel they can't talk about their mental health because they don't want to appear weak or feminine or feeble, and they're worried about the impact it'll have on their career and their opportunities. So I'll be honest, I try and degenderize mental health because I think there can be a lot of preconceptions when it comes to talking about it. But that statement, I mean, that is putting it in real stark terms. And that can be quite a scary thought for people because they are extremes. They are. It's a real tough one. I've just reconnected with a friend from 20 years ago, and I last saw him 22 years ago. And the main reason we really haven't connected is because we lost a friend through mental health and suicide. And none of us could actually face up to that fact. And we kind of sat down, there were three of us, sat down, had a drink, had a meal, and we spent the first hour just talking about that. But none of us could deal with it. And even me, with all of everything that I go through, and I've thought about ending it all, not just the once. Thankfully, I haven't. It scares me that I've thought that. It frightens me. Do I think that I'll have those thoughts again? The way my brain is wired, I probably will. I've just got to learn to deal with it and to try and put mechanisms in to protect myself. And that's it. It's getting people around you to protect yourself, and people who know you and can tell when you're not quite being you, and who can just send you a simple WhatsApp message saying, seriously,
are you okay?
How are you doing? Sometimes those words can just snap you out. But I mean, what about you, Janet?
It's a lovely saying. You know, I'd rather somebody cry on my shoulder than attend a funeral. Of course, you would want that. But that sometimes, my granny used to say this saying, nobody wants to hear a bleeding heart. And I didn't understand that when I was a kid. People get tired of people with mental health because it can be one-sided friendships for a long time. It can be difficult to support somebody through mental health. For your own sanity, for your mental health, there's times you have to step back. So I completely agree. I've had people send me messages, you doing all right, kid? And it has helped. But sometimes it's a long journey to support somebody, and people drift off on the side of that walk of your journey. They'll disappear eventually. And it's the ones that can stick with you are the ones you want to hold on to. And it's not that the first lot were bad lots of friends. It's that it becomes wearisome to support somebody, and then something can take over their life. So I think that's a brilliant statement. Yes, support people with mental health, but dig in and you might have to be there crying on their shoulder every night. Maybe, you know, so it's putting the hours in and the time in and the willingness to put in, because as my old granny used to say, a bleeding heart's hard to sit with all the time, because we all need to be stipulated. We all don't, you know, or you're a radiator, you drain people, etc., etc. So for me, sometimes when I feel really bad and want to cry on somebody's shoulder, I sometimes think, oh God, there's Janet again. Oh, you know, I prefer jazz hands, Janet. She's better crack. She's more fun to hang around. So my thing is, yes, people do want to support you, but make sure that when you offer to support, that's what you do. And I don't mean necessarily, my cat's coming to say hello. I don't mean, you know, once in a blue moon. You have to dig in there, because there's a comedian, and I can't remember his name, and he said it on the radio or TV, and I thought it literally made me stop. And he said, suicide is a permanent solution
to a temporary
problem. So, and I don't want to be disrespectful to the problem, because the one thing that I think Mike and I can both agree on, having been on our own different types of journeys, is that there's ups and downs. So there's days that are better than others. So on the good day, you suddenly think, oh my God, last week I didn't want to be here, but today I can cope. So it's working out the mechanisms of how do I keep the signs to go, you know, I have a rule in my head. I set myself a rule. You're not allowed to make any decisions at nighttime when the mood is low. That's it. That's a permanent rule that I have. I cannot make any decisions, whatever they might be, at nighttime. Everything's worse at nighttime. As soon as the sun comes up and there's a bit of daylight and you've had a wee bit of sleep, that problem has halved or is easier to see. So I have set a cognitive, Janet, no problems to be solved past 6 o'clock in the evening. And that at times has really helped me. I've gone, right, you know the rule. If you're asked to bed, put on a podcast, go to sleep. You can make the decision in the morning. And all of a sudden it's easier to manage because of that statement, suicide being a permanent problem to a temporary solution, because it is fluctual. It will get better, it might get worse, but it's going to move. The dial will move regardless. And I'm sorry to bore you with a big, long story. I think I did this at the Scottish Summit, and I know you've more questions, but this really helped me one day. It's a famous saying that everybody says, this too shall pass. And when I was in the worst point of my life, I found this on a poster, and I stopped. And it was this, a nanosecond of light that said, maybe I'll not always be like this. I bought that poster. It was 25 quid. I hadn't 2 beans to rub together. I bought it framed. It was another 25 quid. And if my house was on fire, my cat would be coming with me, and so would that poster. So it reminds me the good times are also not there forever, but the hard times are not always there forever.
Yeah, and that's really powerful, really powerful. And something I just wanted to ask you mentioned a couple of times. Was it Jazzy Janet and
Jazz Hands Janet? Yeah, she's really good fun.
And your other and the real Janet. I mean, I've met both of you. I think Mike briefly in Scotland, and Janet, I met you at the Scottish Summit as well. And Jazzy Janet was out there in play. And for most people, especially myself and stuff, I didn't know you previously or spoke to you previously. You'd think that's you 100% of the time. And you said the real Janet's quite quiet and stuff. Is the real Janet somewhere in the middle there, like or is it in the middle? Is it just like you're going from? Is it one extreme to the other? Is the real Janet just a mesh of in the middle?
That's a really good question. My first response was, there's only 2 of us. There's a quiet one or a loud one, but that's not true. I work at home and I live alone. I've got my cat here, but I said to somebody recently, I think there's baristas in Belfast diving for cover, because when I'm going in, I am chatting, but I'm not quite Jazz Hands. I'm probably normal Janet. I just want to talk to somebody. Yeah. So the Jazz Hands comes out because, one, I want to encourage people. I want to be motivational. I want people to feel safe in my environment. Sometimes maybe I'm a bit too much, but I want to give energy. The problem is when you give energy, you get tired. Yeah. So I always slump. I always say, when you're a true friend to me, when I don't speak to you. If I'm in the room and I'm watching TV and I don't feel the need to fill a void, is when I know I'm feeling very safe in your environment. But there is actually, I think there's a middle, Janet, where, I'm maybe working, I'm working on a project, I'm going for a coffee. I love talking to people in queues, and they don't get Jazz Hands and they don't get grumpy. They just get this really level person. I don't know where Jazz Hands Janet came from. Well, I do. I absolutely do. That's a complete and utter lie. Jazz Hands Janet came about when I was trying to hide just how ill I was. Except I didn't even know I was ill. I fantasized about stepping in front of buses and then telling myself off because I didn't do it. And then walking into the office and going, "Hi, everybody, I bought you a donut." And I don't want to scare people or frighten people. I was going through a really bad time. The list is endless. What was going on. And I was on my own, and I didn't have a great support network of people close. And I still had to earn a living, pay for a roof over my head, look after illnesses, emotional heartbreak. Loads of things happened. And eventually one more thing happened. And that was the thing that saved me. I thought it was the thing that killed me, but it broke me just too far that I couldn't hide it anymore. And I started to cry. And I didn't know it was physically impossible to stop. And then I couldn't bring Jazz Hands out anymore. And that was the most restful time of my life. I didn't talk for 3 weeks. I just lay in bed My mum and dad looked after me. They brought me my breakfast, lunch, and tea in bed. I was incapable of washing myself. And it took me to physically break for anybody to notice. And when I was then taken to hospital and spoken with doctors, they were like, oh my goodness, last week she was at a conference in Texas in front of 2,000 people. How are these two people the same thing? They were surprised at how I had bluffed so beautifully. So yeah,
I think you see that quite a bit in terms of, you know, like celebrities, obviously, people like Robin Williams and who have passed away, have had that eccentric personality, and then nobody knows that the demons that they're facing back at home, and unfortunately with him, it went too far the other way. I'll let Andrew ask a question in a minute.
I was gonna say, like, for me, you know, I won't shy away from the fact that, you know, I have suffered with mental health, and even today I'm actually going through talking therapy because of issues that are still unresolved in my own mental health. You know, it is a tough one. I mean, say in my household alone, there's been quite a few people that have taken their own lives. So recently, just 2 weeks ago, my wife lost one of her close school friends. They haven't really spoke for, you know, a number of years, but she got herself into a point where obviously she don't want to be here anymore, and she took her own life within 2 weeks ago. And my brother-in-law, another person, took his own life. I had a cousin during COVID that took their own life as well. So for me, it's, while obviously it has affected me directly, it's also affected me indirectly as well through, you know, other people around me having these particular issues. And yeah, like I say, I'm not going to shy away from the fact that, yeah, I've had dark thoughts, but the thing that pulls me back from ever going down that route is seeing the damage that it does to other people, because I've seen that on multiple occasions. I saw it, what it done when my brother-in-law took his own life, saw what it done to my mother-in-law, what happened to my cousin as well, and the family affected there. It's not a nice place to be. And, you know, you see it in the news all the time about people that suffer with mental health issues end up taking their own lives in, you know, many different forms. I mean, just in my local area, in the last 6 months, I know of 2 people. So it's just, it's a horrible thing. And I think, obviously, yes, having the coping mechanisms, whether that's a good support network or having a daily routine that works for you, you know, helps. And for me, you know, I think there's different versions of me. Just like you said, Janet, you know, you have that version of you that's, you know, really out there. I mean, for me, that's when I'm, you know, being a football manager, managing my under-10s team, you know, doing something completely different, really enjoying it, doing this podcast, you know, completely different. And then I have the professional me, which, you know, people see at work, and then the personal me, which, you know, not many people get to really see, apart from my partner, which, you know, sometimes drives up the wall, because, you know, that's the one that's me was quite anxious, quite wary of, you know, just putting myself out there. But then, you know, I look behind me and go, look, well, you know, I've achieved MVP status because I put myself out there. You know, I can go and speak in front of hundreds of people and do that quite successfully. But yeah, when it comes to dealing with people close to me or personally, I struggle massively.
Yeah, can I? One thing I would just like to say is all 4 of us have kind of mentioned I guess what you could say is the ultimate expression of severe mental health in terms of suicide. That is extreme. And for anybody listening who is struggling with mental health, but is kind of thinking, well, I'm not thinking about suicide, so I don't have mental health challenges. If you've got to a point where you're thinking about suicide, then you're kind of emergency room mental health care requirement at that point. You've left it really way down the road before kind of seeking help. If you're struggling with mental health, if you're starting to doubt yourself regularly, you're feeling down, you're having black days where you can't get out of bed, where you can't get dressed. I mean, I've been there, like Janet, where I've just lain in bed and I couldn't do anything. I literally couldn't do anything. at that point, you need to seek help. You need to talk to people. Professional help, always professional help, but find close friends. I have multiple versions of me, and I actually have to make sure I put protection mechanisms in place. So before Scottish Summit, I sent a message into the speakers WhatsApp group, and I just said, folks, if you see me, withdraw and be quiet. Please don't think I'm being rude. I'm just struggling. Come and see me. And at the event, there were people there who would see me. I'd go to the speakers' dinner or what have you. I'd have a beer to say hi, and then I'd just disappear off because I needed to protect me, because it's energy draining. I mean, I don't have jazz hands, Janet. I probably have mad head Mike, and where I go loopy or whatever. But that's energy draining. Every time I do an event, I always take the Monday afterwards off work because I need time to recharge, because I can't do people. I can't do people because the mental effort for me to try and be sociable in front of people is really draining. I can be real with some people. There are some people I know and I can really be open and honest with them. And when I'm talking like this, I will be really open and honest. I think Janet and I really kind of floored people when we spoke on the Microsoft panel at Scottish Summit, because I don't think they really truly appreciated how blunt and honest we could be. But yeah, if there are people listening, please just don't let it get to the point where you are thinking, well, what can I do? How can I do it? I'd be better off if. Don't. Just please don't.
So in terms of the stages, then when you get to that, what is the first stage where, in that sense, in terms of mental health, when is the point of, oh, I'm having a mental health issue today? What should people be looking out for?
So it can come in lots of different ways, because guess what? We're all made differently. So the key thing is, the lovely thing for me is, because there's been many ups and downs, and there's times when I will say, you know what, I'm doing good. I'm really good. I wouldn't say that I have any mental health issues other than good ones at the moment, that type of thing. But it can manifest itself into many things, like eating or sleeping too much or too little. I am an eater. Oh my goodness, and I can actually feel it. I can feel it go, oh my goodness, nothing would fill me. It's like an obsession for me. You can pull away from people, stop your usual activities, having low or no energy, feeling numb, like nothing matters, etc., etc. People drink too much, smoke too much, eat too much, yell, fight, fall out with people, find somebody to have a fight with. It could be, or things that you suddenly get very sensitive to that wouldn't have bothered you, last week. It's working out what you are. So I was very proud of myself. I gave myself a gold star, and that wasn't even jazz hands, Janet. That was Quiet Janet gave a gold star, because there was one day in work quite a few months ago, and I thought, I don't want this job anymore. I can't do this. Things were firing at me. It had been firing for once too long. I hadn't taken enough breaks, hadn't gone for a walk, hadn't tortured any baristas for a few days. And I suddenly felt very overwhelmed. And I found myself in the doorway of my study, and I'd sort of come into the room and went out of the room and come into the room and gone to the kitchen. And I went, here, love, stop. You're having a bad day. Guess what? This day will end and you get another go at it tomorrow. So cut yourself some slack, kid. And I suddenly went, that is the bravest thing I've ever done. I've clocked it. I've told myself, this is what you see, and I've given myself a break. The problems is, until you've really experienced it and had the curve, it's hard to read your signs. So knowing what signs are really good, like pushing away your friend. Why haven't you spoken to her for a long time? Oh, because then they might ask me. They might ask me, and they know me, and they might tell me. So are you pushing somebody away, Are you being aggressive or frustrated very easily? And then you can work things out, work backwards. Well, what? It's very important to ask why, why. Do the 5 whys and say, well, what? So I really was overwhelmed today, really overwhelmed. I've had Lyme disease. I do not do well on bad sleep. I need good 8-hour solid, snoring, sore throat sleep. Didn't get it. I've been traveling. I'm knackered. I'm tired. Of course, I'm not coping very well on a stressful call. Take a break. I'm now going to take some leave because I know if I continue like this, I'll go down. So it's working out what your personal triggers are, challenging yourself and going, why have I stopped playing football? Why have I, why? And then once you've done your 5 whys, you'll get your answer. But it's clocking it. It's clocking why you've managed to do 3 box sets in 2 days. There's a reason. You go excessive at things and you block people out. So, and I love what Mike said. Just because Mike and I have had really difficult times doesn't mean, that you haven't had mental health yourself, because I've just described a mental health episode when you're tired, you're this, you're that, you can't cope in work. There's different levels of it. And what Mike said is important to notify, like when you're lying in bed and you can't speak to anybody and you're having those thoughts, that's the red button. But our goal, I hope, in this call is to stop us getting to the red button, to realize that there are signs and signals and this isn't the end of the world. The day will end and we will start afresh and we get a new hit of the day the next day. But we need to solve the problem, and that's why you ask why.
So something that you kind of said a bit earlier in terms of people are scared to speak up because of work, particularly was the one that kind of caught my eye the most. Was work. I'm worried that someone at work might think I'm not doing this or might think my performance is taking a hit and stuff. What do you think companies or could do better or do in general to kind of help support colleagues and co-workers to with their mental health?
Right. I think one of the big things that I've learned this year, and it blew my mind, because the other side of me, I'm a big accessibility advocate, and that's what I do a lot of talking about. Earlier this year, I actually discovered that mental health is a disability. I had never, ever known that. My wife looked at me and she went, "How did you not know that?" And I'm like, I have no idea. They're my 2 big things. So mental health is legally a disability. That immediately means that companies have to, by law, not discriminate against you. That actually, learning that fact can really make a big difference, because you are protected. Now, one thing I will say is people who have long-term mental health might come to terms with it, and they might be quite open about it and kind of like, I want to get rid of the stigma because I can deal with it. People with disabilities, they can go, I've got a disability. A lot of people with disabilities will have mental health struggles. But you'll find that people who have kind of been born with disabilities will not like to talk about their mental health. Likewise, people with mental health issues may not like to actually say the D word. There's a complete different stigma involved in that. But irrespective of that, there are legal protections there, because mental health is a disability. But what companies can do, mental first aid courses, get mental first aiders trained up in organisations, managers and colleagues who are genuinely available, company policies that make it clear that you can take me days, duvet days, whatever you want to call them. I've not yet worked at an organisation where that's been in place. And I really wish I did, because I think every organisation would be better off if they allowed people to take mental health days. It's better for the company that somebody says, I need a break, rather than them pushing through and delivering work that is subpar and not able to deal with clients in the same way. I mean, when you think about it from pure cash terms, that is bad for the company. Throw in a mental health day, allow somebody to recharge and refresh, so they come back and they can go boom and absolutely smash it with the client. That's worth more. Go on, Jan. I see. Go on.
It was just that so I work for Microsoft, and I cannot fault them on their mental health strategy policy. I think it was last year, everybody got 5 extra day holidays. Do what they liked with mental health days, go for a walk, do whatever you need. And that went down like a beautiful ray of sunshine, because people needed it, because we've been through lockdown. Again, they have really strong manager training. They have a Microsoft Cares. There's massive levels of support. And I will not fault them for it. I have used their support and I have been grateful for it, very much so. However, there is an element of, I still think there's an underlying element of, I think Mike said it right at the start, that they're seen as weak. They're not as strong as the other person. It's actually the complete opposite. It's just they've been too strong for too long. And that's what's happened. They've gone on for too long. So I don't mind talking. I find this uncomfortable. I know it's unlooked, but I don't like showing that I've had bad times. But I hope by talking about it, then people go, well, she's still pretty normal. She's still pretty cool. She's still pretty fun. And she's, she's had up bad days and she's come back and she's still hopefully rocking it in work. So I think the more we talk about it and show that, one, there is recovery, or ways of managing, ways of noticing triggers, ways of noticing support. I'm very good now with my team to say, I'm going off for a wee stress cry. And they'll go, right, what happened? What caused the stress cry? And it's usually not enough sleep in my book. But again, I can go back and look at it. But there is still the element of, you're not as strong, or don't want you in my team because you might go off for a duvet day. We have to get past that. We have to get past it, because it's part of our life. We are completely and utterly continuously stimulated. Our wee heads need a wee break so much. I was coming home in the flight last night. I was watching a movie and I went, Janet, turn it off and shut your eyes. You're tired. But I thought, if I sleep now, I'll sleep later. And I started to fight with myself and I went, stop it. Shut your eyes. You're absolutely beeswaxed. Turned off the phone, turned off the work phone, stopped the emails, everything, and shut my eyes. We need to give ourselves a break first. That's what we need to do. We need to say, I'm important enough to give myself a break. I'm more important than that meeting. I'm more important than tidying the house for my in-laws coming round. I'm important. I am worth this. Because if you don't do it now, you might end up like me in the bed, not talking to anybody for 3 weeks, which you don't want to do. But that is the first stepping stone of getting sicker, by not going, I need to look after myself, and finding something to look after yourself and not feel guilty about it. Like turning off your phone, turning off your emails, shutting your eyes. I'm not very good at meditation because my eye doesn't shut well, and I'm a shiny person, so I get distracted by something that flashes in front of me. But this was a good tip I was given when I was really sick. If you're going to go for a walk and you find it boring, start grading everybody's garden. Oh, that one's crap, that's 2. Oh, that's a 5. Oh, hold on, if that's a 5, that has to be upgraded to a 3, because it'll keep you in the present. And that's where we need to be, in the present. We don't need to be 6 months down the line, if I don't get this meeting done today, and catastrophizing. We don't need to be looking back on, oh my God, I'm still in this job and I wanted to be, I set myself a life plan. It's about being present, breathing your way through it, and sharing how you're feeling and stopping it before it gets too big. But I do believe unless we keep talking about it and showing how we survive it, there will still be a stigma. Because as Mike said, we automatically go to the extremes of, oh my goodness, Janet says she's having a bad mental health day. Flip me again. We need to stop it. And the only reason we stop it is by we taking control and saying, I'm going to give myself a break. I'm going to talk about it. And I'm going to show you why that's beneficial. We need more stories of surviving. We need more stories of taking the brave step and putting our hand up and saying, guess what? Nothing happened. I put my hand up in work during COVID. And they said, Janet, what are you doing here? Nobody is going to bat an eyelid if you take a week off. And if it's 2 or it's 3 or it's 4, we'll be waiting for you when you come back. My God, somebody else gave me permission to look after myself. Why didn't I do that? So
yeah, I mean, for me, obviously, we all work from home, and obviously sometimes just getting out of the house for that short period of time. Obviously, you already spoke about going to baristas and stuff like that.
oh, they're hiding.
me,
They're
like-
hiding under the tables when I walk in now. That woman never shuts up.
It's for me, it's something I never really considered, but I know my line manager, for him, he calls it a mental health break. He literally will go to the local Costa, go and sit in there and just basically just do work from there. And it's something I'm now actually trying to implement into my own life. Just I've got Wetherspoons not far from where I live. Literally just go there, get the refillable coffee and just basically sit in there and do work from there, because obviously that way I'm not sat here seeing the same 4 walls. I'm actually getting out of the house for a longer period of time than I would normally, just to, have that clear mental health space. And I think when I did it last time, I was more productive because I was in a completely different environment and I was able to focus on what I was doing. Where being sat here, I've got all the distractions of all the things around me. Sometimes you just need that mental health break from just normal activities that you do, just to, keep yourself sane, basically.
I can't agree more, Andrew. I went to Costa the other day and their bacon rolls are to die for. And I thought, why didn't I do this more often? Honestly. Yeah, I think it's brilliant. Change of 4 walls.
Yeah, I think finding those coping mechanisms, finding those things that are your personal sort of wellness toolkit. For me, I end every day, I have to have a period of time at the end of the day where it's just me, not me and my wife, not me and the family, just me on my own, where I can decompress. And I have to do that every day. I have my work phone, so it goes straight to silent at 6:30 at night. So I will not check it. 5 o'clock on Friday, I shut my work laptop down, I shut my work phone down, and I physically put them into a drawer, because this space is my home office. I do all the geek stuff as a hobby as well. This is where I play my Xbox and everything else. So I don't want my work laptop and my work phone visible. I stick them out of the way and I say, I'm not at work anymore.
Well done.
And just that simple act of putting it out of sight. Somebody suggested it to me last year and I was just like, nah. It's like, it actually really does work. It makes a big difference. But we've got to work out what are the things that help us. Going for a walk is huge. Getting silence, sitting in a darkened room, whatever it is. I mean, this room, I've got blackout blinds and blackout curtains. So when I want, I can turn everything off and this room can be as dark as can be. So even if I've got my eyes open, it's still dark and I'm not as distracted. I can have all the flashing lights in here or I can have none. So it's finding those mechanisms. And I think the other thing to say is it sounds pat, it sounds cliched, but we also need to recognise it is okay to not be okay. And actually, the stronger people are the ones that go through this sort of thing, because we have to be strong to deal with what we deal with. And that is strength, not weakness.
Mm.
You know what? There's a striking similarity between all three of you. You're all so laser focused, I think, on everything that you do, like in terms of work, in terms of everything like that. And is it the switching off, not being able to switch off from that is sometimes the issue?
I think for me, no. For me, no, not at all, because of what Mike just said. You have to practice at getting well. And people will say, oh, I went on holiday and I was about 6 days before I stopped thinking about work. Really, it took me 6 nanoseconds, because I have worked at that. I have genuinely worked at, my phone goes off. My phone doesn't come with me. It gets shut down. Once that laptop's shut, that's it. And that took practice, absolutely practice to do. So I'm quite good with work. So, and you said laser focused. Am I laser focused in my personal life? Absolutely not. That's what, that's why I don't have as many rules around my work, my personal life, that can make it difficult for me. But when you put rules and regulations that you've made, that you've approved and you've worked at, like no more sneaking in at 10, like mind you, I did send an email last night, but that's enough. Very rarely do I come back into this office when the day is done. The phone doesn't come with me. But it's where you don't have boundaries, for me, is where the difficulty is. Because I put boundaries in work, yes, there's times of flux, but it's not usually work that has caused the flux for me, because I don't have good boundaries outside of work. So
for me, I definitely have boundaries when it comes to work. I mean, only this week I was literally checking my phone because I was organising a webinar with Donna Sarkar in the States. So time zone wise, I had to go back to work to check emails to have that conversation. But when it comes to work, 5:30, that's it. Laptop is shut down. But then obviously for me, because of obviously doing this podcast and like doing all the community things I'm trying to do in raising awareness on women in tech, that's part of my life doesn't always switch off. So I'm always kind of thinking, what can I do better? How can I improve things? So there for me, I need probably to put more boundaries in there for that, from that respect. But as I say, I completely agree. When it comes to personal life, there's obviously, you don't really have boundaries as such. I mean, yes, I've got like a young family, so I try and do things in a certain way. I'm not going to say they're always successful, because they're not. But work-wise, always put boundaries in place, because you don't want to be working ridiculous hours and not having that mental health break from work. And because especially when you work from home, you need that clear defining line. You don't want the grey space where it becomes the norm to constantly be working into the really hours of the morning. But for personal life, obviously that's where everyone kind of struggles, trying to put that wrapper around. This is what I should do within this particular period of time, and that I know full well for myself. I struggle with that.
Cool. All right. I know we're ending. We're really close to the hour mark, and I know a couple of us have got meetings and stuff going forward. So it's been a bloody eye opener for me. This, as I said, before. I mean, sometimes you do have some. I don't even say I'd have bad days. I have bad minutes. And it's not. So in terms of mental health, I feel I'm a noob still, but I think I'm a noob that's gained a couple of experience points today. If you're talking about gaming aspects of things, so some experience points today, and it's been an absolute pleasure, Janet and Mike, to have you on today. It's real important topic, and obviously this episode's going out on Mental Health Day, and as I said at the beginning of the start of the show, I hope that one person listens today, and it makes a difference in some type of way from all three of your experiences.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing. So for me, obviously, mental health is obviously a big thing for me, and sharing it on this podcast as well, is massively important. So, thank you for joining me and John today in the conversation, because it's basically done what I wanted to do. It's basically have that conversation and open it up on a particular day where, there is a spotlight, hence the podcast name always, on a particular day that, and a topic that, is very close to my heart.
Good. Thanks for giving us the opportunity, and I'll hopefully see you soon.
See you soon.
Yes, thank you very much.
Everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. Please make sure you hit that like, share and subscribe button to help us promote our message. You can also follow us on Twitter at MSFT Spotlight, and we're also on LinkedIn, the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. And finally, we'd like to tell you a little bit about BitTitan and thank them for sponsoring this podcast.
Remote migrations start here. Let MigrationWiz do the work for you. It's fast, secure, and 100% SaaS, which means you can migrate at any time and from anywhere. Migrate mailboxes, documents, public folders, personal archives, or even Microsoft Teams with just a few clicks. No special training needed and no customer downtime. When the work matters, choose MigrationWiz.